Hello, friends. This is Cassandra Joan Butler, and I'm here with you to explain the astrological highlights of 2020. We're calling this the year of transformation for many reasons. It starts off with an amazing deconstruction, and then as it unfolds, we are rebuilding our lives on so many different levels. So I want to talk to you for a moment before we get to the slides. As I see 2020, it's a year when we are dealing with our worst case fears about the structures in our lives so that we can move through those fears and come on to the other side stronger and more in our personal strength and authority than ever before. So you see the sign of Capricorn is being highlighted throughout the year. And Capricorn represents the mountain. It represents everything that has to do with structure on a psychological basis and, of course, on an external basis, which are the governments and the banking and the big monopolies of corporations. All of the things that it takes to create a firm foundation in our lives in 2020. It's as if we have a new awareness to rip down the old and to resurrect and create a stronger foundation for ourselves. So if you don't know astrology, you want to identify right off the bat where Capricorn is falling in your chart. Now, there are wonderful programs all across the web. I would invite you to visit my website, CassandraJoanButler.com. As you go into the homepage, on the upper right, you can plug in your information, and then you will be able to identify where Capricorn falls in your chart, because that is the area of the 12 areas of your life that's really being reworked and restructured in such a way. And remember, the first part of the year, especially in January, you may have had to face fears of the worst case scenario and move through those fears in order to create a more firmer and more integrated and holistic you. So we're going to go to our slides, and I want to wish you all a very, very happy 2020. And as we go through, again, I want to use the word transformation as opposed to changes, because changes, everything always changes. Transformation is when one thing becomes another through a third force, almost like alchemy. A transformation is when the original placement of your life, the original place where Capricorn falls, is no longer the same in any way, shape, or form. So what is this idea of transformation? Transformation happens when the stronger planets align. Now, you may ask, what's a stronger planet? Some considerations as we go through this. In a simple way, the longer the orbits of the planets, the more powerful the effects. And so here we talk about the macro effects, even societal effects, mundane effects. And we have, in order of importance or strength, Pluto, which takes approximately 260 years to go around the sun, Neptune, 165, Uranus, 84 years, Chiron, 50, Saturn, 28 and a half years, and the eclipse cycle, which repeats itself approximately every 18 and a half years, around 19 years. So you could make an argument that when these planets are active, things change and transform in a deeper way. We are always going through cycles. We're always going through changes. The quickest change of all, of course, is the moon. And the moon will go through each one of the 12 signs of the Zodiac during one lunar month. So, you know, the root of the moon, the word moon is mood. So if you're in a terrible mood, just wait 2.5 days and the moon changes, and often our mood or our perspective changes as well. So we're going to look at both of these cycles throughout this video and give you a chance to kind of digest where this may fall in your chart. Again, this is a user-friendly type of presentation, so you don't have to know astrology. You just want to find in an intro way where Capricorn falls, and ideally where the other planets, of course, fall in your chart as well. All right, so where's this big alignment? The big alignment took place on January 12th of 2020. This is post January 12th as I'm recording this. And you can see on the chart, we had the sun lined up with Ceres. Now, Ceres is the asteroid through which we define the caretaking ability through food. The root of Ceres is in the word cereal. And so Ceres was the goddess of the grain. So how she resonates next to the sun and next to Saturn is that we're taking, as we start the year off, more responsibility with which the way we nurture ourselves, feed ourselves. We all know that there's an upsurge in organic products, food products of every stripe. And I think the awareness and consciousness of eating more clean and more pure is really taking off on so many different levels. We also have Saturn-Pluto conjunction is the main starring attraction of this conjunction. And I'm going to talk about Pluto and Saturn as though they're characters, as it were. And so this is something that only happens, the conjunction that is, the Pluto-Saturn conjunction, every 34 years. But in the sign of Capricorn, it's much more rare. And we have all of these planets converging in Capricorn. So we start off the year with quite an intense conjunction. Conjunction simply means the planets are close together. A conjunction is as if we have the quality of one planet, the quality of the second planet, they blend and they take on the attributes and the traits of each other and create like a new, a new third of energy. So what is this Pluto and Saturn all about? If Pluto was a person or an entity, it would be Dr. Death. Pluto is the planet of great intensity, ruling death and rebirth. Saturn, or I like to call him Grumpy Old Man, GOM, he is the energy of structure, rules, regulations. Saturn is the gravitas and gravity in our lives, what really matters to us. Now, this exact conjunction in the degree of 22 in Capricorn, which took place in 2020 on the 12th of January, in some ways we've been living with this intensity for years now. Why? Because way back when, in 2008, Pluto first made its appearance for the first time in 265 years in the sign of Capricorn. And Saturn has been cruising through Capricorn as well since December 20th of 2017. So they basically, they're on this race and they finally converged at the same time. The reason, of course, is because Pluto's orbit is much slower than Saturn's. So as they move together, the new year had a feeling or a sense of gravitas and upheaval. You may recall in the middle of January, there was on the micro world, the mundane world, of course, the real intensity of the impeachment process. We also had at that point major anguish in Australia with the fires. We also had volcanoes. We also had a lot of, I would say, fear about what's going to be happening in this election year. I was saying to a lot of people, again, this is not being recorded in January, it's in February now. But as we were past that 12th of January, I would ask them, oh, Doesn't it seem as though the holidays were months and months ago? And I think because the essence of the early part of 2020 felt so heavy because these planets, which are, quote, heavy and intense, were in this heavy sign of Capricorn. So it's as if time felt more sluggish, as though we're really slugging through a great deal of, again, gravitas. Well, here's something that softens our dance in 2020, and that is Jupiter. I like to call him good old Santa Claus. Jupiter is also in Capricorn. Now, he wasn't lined up in the January date. In fact, Jupiter was on top of the South Node in Capricorn at that time. Now, what that means is simply that since Jupiter is about exaggeration and enhancement and expansion, we perhaps were feeling more fears of the Capricorn nature, more limits in our lives. Again, post-dating here in January 12th. Anyway, let's talk about Jupiter in its essence. Jupiter is also Zeus, the king of the pantheon. Jupiter moved into Capricorn, had its ingress back in December 3rd. He will be in Capricorn until the 19th of 2020. And every time Jupiter is in a sign, that creates a new 12-year cycle. So it takes approximately a year to go through a particular sign. And so Jupiter's orbit is approximately 12 years. Jupiter is about expansion wherever it touches. And since Capricorn is the sign of business, we may expect a lot of business expansion in 2020. It's also an indicator for expansion of rules, not conservatism as a policy or a political philosophy, but rather a conservative approach to the sense of etiquette, a need for the good old days. Here are some expressions for Jupiter and Capricorn. You may want to try some new things in your life, some new goals, some new businesses, some new dreams. And if you don't succeed, you may fail faster, but bounce back quicker, because where Jupiter touches, it gives us confidence. We might manifest quicker because Capricorn is a very strong structural matter earth sign. And with anything having to do with philosophy, religion, beliefs, we want something that works. We want something, such as like astrology, that can give us a sense of grounding reality. So these are some reflections on this passage of Santa Claus in the sign of Capricorn for 2020. So it's as if we got the Pluto, we've got Jupiter and Saturn, all in Capricorn, plus we had the eclipse and various asteroids as we started off the year. So good old Santa Claus basically softened things, right? This is not the grumpy old man, this is the grumpy young man. However, anything having to do with rules and regulations, such as the military, is a great archetype for Saturn. Because, I mean, obviously, in any sort of hierarchy, such as the military, you need to have amazing rules, and there's always the person at the top. So you've got angry young man, Santa Claus, and the death-defying archetypal energy of Pluto as depicted by the volcano. All right, so now I'm going to go through kind of a cookbook for you. You can identify your sun sign or rising sign, and please blend both if you know both. But if not, we'll just use your sun sign. Again, I don't want to make this, I want to make this accessible to all. If you're Aries or Aries rising, it's as if this lineup of Capricorn enhanced energy is falling what we call your 10th solar house. Now that's the house of career. And in some ways, you've been wrestling the past 2 years with really trying to deal with your fears concerning your gifts and your leadership abilities in the career, If you don't have a quote job, however you are able to interface with the outer world is being highlighted for you. So 2020 is the time for you to restructure the fear, to step into a new sense of authority, basically a new life for yourself, a new image, and become the leader you've always wanted to become, and to really accept and nourish and nurture and celebrate your own authority out there. Because inside you may have been having a little fear, right? You may have been feeling the fear of being exposed and not being the valuable person that you are, Aries. So the little cartoon says your fear of being publicly exposed as a fraud is a stress-related disorder called imposter syndrome. It's common among people in high-profile authority positions, though of course in actual phonies like you. So let that go, Aries or Aries rising. Taurus or Taurus rising. This particular lineup of energy as we start the new year is in what we call your ninth house. The ninth house signifies your philosophy, your beliefs, your spirituality, and basically how you navigate your life through your beliefs. So you may have, as we approach 2020, something of a crisis of faith, the dark night of the soul, questioning and wondering, who are you? What do you believe? Some Taurus or Taurus risings may decide to expand their knowledge base by going back to school in some form, shape, or another, receive new training, perhaps traveling more. They may have been entering the year and dealing with that in 2018 and 2019, by the way, legal difficulties that they had to balance in their lives. Speaking one's truth is the fallout and the positive that comes from this conjunction as 2020 unfolds. Speaking your truth no matter what, and turning your wisdom into the sharing of teaching. The best teacher, of course, is someone who's always learning. So Taurus or Taurus rising may be taking this opportunity to truly become a font of wisdom because they've gone through the difficulty of questioning. If you're Gemini or Gemini rising, this particular lineup as 2020 begins is in what we call the 8th house. Now, the 8th house is a very peculiar house. It's the house that we have, quote, no control over. The old astrology books called it the house of sex, death, and taxes. You wonder, what do those have in common, right? Well, those are all areas of life which we have very little control over. And if you are a Gemini or Gemini rising, you may notice that anyone who is in your life as an intimate partner, that does not necessarily simply mean sexual at all, it means psychologically intimate, will change you and transform you, or you will change or transform them. The bottom line is you'll step out of your fear about the unknown regarding the topics of death and the topics of intimacy. You may also activate your own personal power through new spiritual tools. And the 8th house is often the house of the money we manage, not our income, but how we are taking our resources and creating long-term financial security. So you Gemini or Gemini rising people may be saying to yourself, you know, enough is enough. I'm really going to start a savings plan or clean up my debt, something like this. But that might be your short-term goal as the year unfolds. For Cancer or Cancer rising, this transit is falling what we call your 7th house of partner. So this is a very interesting house because if you are happily involved with a partnership, you may find a new sense and a new intimacy with the person, or you may realize that you've come to the end of the line. All right, so this particular energy is depicting some structural changes in partnership, which could be a new marriage or it could be a divorce. However, the definition of what you want from a partner is being modified and changed. You may also find that your old best friends may leave you. New connections will be formed, and that's also indicative by the eclipses that Cancer has been navigating through since 2018. When the eclipses, we'll be talking a little bit more about those in a moment, but the North Node eclipses have been in the sign of Cancer for the past couple of years. So that means that Cancers have been meeting new people and letting go of certain others. Plus, with this Capricorn lineup, that really is putting a lot of onus on your partnership energy. If you are single, as the notation here is, my biggest fear is that I will become too comfortable with the idea of being lonely for the rest of my life. So you may decide as 2020 unfolds, I'm going to make partnering a priority. But finding someone that there is a right balance between my needs and the significant other's needs. Leo or Leo rising. Now, when we think of Leo or Leo rising, we certainly don't think of worry. Leo is such an amazing fire sign. It represents confidence and leadership, charisma. Well, with this lineup of Capricorn in your 6th house, you may have experienced worry for the first time in a long time. But the worry may have been really focused on your work and your physical health and the way you're taking care of yourself. So the essence, the call of 2020 is for you to change up your self-care program, make that commitment, make that structure to diet and exercise, and create more of a worry-free life for yourself. A new job or a new way of doing work might be in the offering as well. And you may need to transform the fear of your health into taking action. Again, this is all about the fear as we start 2020. Also, the 6th house is a very analytical house. It's naturally Virgo ruled. So our Leo or Leo rising friends might be actually analyzing their inner self in a new way, maybe invoking different therapies to help in that regard. Virgo rising. Well, you guys have a free pass to have fun in 2020. You know, Virgo is the sign that represents work and diligence and dedication and devotion. And they're often called the workaholics of the Zodiac. But because this energy is falling in what is called the 5th house of fun, creativity, and children, 2020 represents an opportunity for the Virgos to make fun a priority and to reconfigure any structural deficits in your life to attract love and romance, and to transform any difficult relationships you may have with children or grandchildren or lovers, so you have more of a flow with the people that you care about. Also, you might be becoming more diligent with getting those creative projects complete and expressing yourself in a more authoritative, I should say, and authentic way for the Virgos. Libra or Libra rising. Now, this sign has been living technically since 2008, when the wave first began, when Pluto first began and going into Capricorn, and then more intensely in the past 2 years since Saturn has been in Capricorn. They have been dealing with issues regarding family, structure, home, and security on all levels. So as the year begins, those Libra folks or Libra risings have been dealing with the fear of perhaps losing the foundation, or literally losing their home, or literally losing family members. As we unfold in 2020, the onus is on you, Libra, to reconstruct what really matters so you're more comfortable within your own skin. You might literally fix that foundation in your home, or fix the inner psychological foundation within yourself. Also, forgiving family members is a real important thing to do as you go through 2020. And I put up Ancestry.com because in my family, there's a lot of Libras. For the holidays, we were gifting each other with Ancestry.com. and doing the DNA testing. You know, we want to find our roots. So that might become a very positive way of dealing with this Capricorn lineup in your house of home and family. Scorpio. Scorpio or Scorpio rising. This lineup is in what we call your third house. The third house is the thinking house, the house of marketing, the house of scheduling, the house of the environment. So I would suspect that some of the Scorpios out there have been feeling fear in their thoughts. So please heal my fear-based thoughts, Scorpio. That is your project for 2020. And also face the critics. What's the worst thing they can do if you speak your mind? What's the worst thing they can do if you are writing or doing a speaking project? You may also find yourself needing to connect more with your siblings and literally restructuring your thoughts or communication in a new way. This would be also a fantastic time for Scorpio to take time out of your busy schedule and really configure the way you think through meditation. Become more disciplined in how you are thinking your thoughts and tune out the inner critic. Be aware of how you are speaking to yourself. That is what would be most advisable for you as we unfold in 2020. Sagittarius or Sagittarius rising people, this energy is in your second house of self-worth and values and income. So at the face of it, you may have been starting the new year with a lot of worry about finances, and use that worry to motivate you to clean up your act, to safeguard your money in a new way, perhaps find a new income stream, or identify skills that you've had forever and say, you know what, it's time for me to have a new hobby that creates a new income flow. Take care of your important structures of your possessions. All right, like you might want to redo something within the home and do an inventory of what's important to you and what's not in a material way. Get rid of clutter, for example. Most importantly is to identify your own self-worth so that negates some of the worry about finance. All eyes is on Capricorn or Capricorn rising, because this lineup in astrological speak is in your first house of yourself. The first house is the persona. The first house is how I am, my presence, my look, my image. So you Capricorn or Capricorn rising people may be more preoccupied with turning your fear of not being attractive into taking the steps to do so. Getting a new wardrobe, a new identity, weight management, restructuring your persona so that you are reflecting the responsible, reliable person that you are. Because this is the sign of the 3 R's: respectful, reliable, and responsible. You want to step into your renewed authority with greater confidence and charisma after this first part of the fearful beginning of 2020. So get rid of that right side here on the slide. Forget being not enough, not smart enough, pretty enough, skinny enough, or good enough. You can just burn that sign altogether and just embrace and love your own authentic self. Aquarius or Aquarius rising, the innovators of the Zodiac, right? We love Aquarius. They're always coming up with new things. They're friendly, they're fun. However, with this lineup, it has been in their 12th house. The 12th house is the house of spirituality, but it's also the house of the unknown. So Aquarius may have been wrestling with things that they have no control over. And in essence, they are tying up 30 years worth of activity, thoughts. It's almost like negating their karma, so to speak. You may find yourself, if you're an Aquarius or an Aquarius rising, wanting to pursue more spiritual tools such as dream analysis, meditation, psychic and spiritual development. But in any case, make sure you factor in more rest and retreat this year. and let go of the fears of the unknown. Pisces or Pisces rising. This transit is happening in what we call your 11th house of friends, groups, and associations. So for you, you may suddenly realize as we start this new year that some of the people you've been hanging with, your tribe, are not truly your like-minded friends. You need to set up boundaries. And Pisces is sometimes, it's difficult for the Pisces to do that because they're often so compassionate and loving and kind. So the nugget for you is to restructure the people that are in your life. Take your initiative to recraft your goals and put up those boundaries if necessary, and let go of the old friends and invite new people into your world. You might want to step down from overbooking yourself, or just say no to some of the requests of your friends, putting yourself first before them for change. Alrighty, so we talked about the fear factor in the early part of the year, but we also have a liberating factor that comes up throughout 2020, and here are the dates. This is when Jupiter, Santa Claus, aligns with Dr. Death, Pluto, or the volcano. Now, this is a growth surge. So we're deconstructed in the first part of the year, and this might be taking all the way until at least July, by the way. But in the meantime, we have certain dates when we get a huge burst of energy and confidence and want to take some risks to go where you've never gone before. That could be where Capricorn falls in your chart. It could be, of course, a new career, a new relationship, a new home, but wherever it is harmonizing within your own personal chart, you'll want to get out and have the confidence to try something new. Those dates are April 4th, June 30th, November 12th. That's when Jupiter and Pluto will be together in the sky in a conjunction. It's a great growth surge. Let's talk about those doorways of change. So I talked a little bit about the pulse of the eclipses. They're the lunar eclipses. And of course, the eclipses, because they are lunar, they relate to anything having to do with the moon, our security, our emotions, our unconscious desires. They change and they go through the signs in the same sign once every 18 and a half years. That's why the year, our first eclipse return or nodal return that occurs when we're 18 and a half years of age, is such a significant time in our lives. And a simple formula would simply be to add on 18 and a half years in that pulse or pattern throughout your life, because that's when the eclipses open up new doorways for you. The eclipses are almost like destiny pathways. Now in 2018 and 2019, the eclipses were in Cancer and Capricorn, which roughly refer to home and security. In 2020 and 2021, they move into the signs of Gemini and Sagittarius, which are the energies of communication and wisdom, rhetoric. That's amazingly important during an election year. So in any case, all of us personally will want to be very mindful of how we use words, how we speak and write and think. So we're entering into that space of speaking our truth and walking our talk. And these are the pivotal days. So eclipses, doorways to consciousness. We started the year off with a bang. On the 10th of January, we had the eclipse at 20 Cancer. The next one, a lunar eclipse, is in Sagittarius on the 5th of June. Then we start summer off with a solar eclipse, a very powerful one at that. It's at 1 degree of Cancer. The sun will be disappearing. Lunar eclipse on the 5th of July, the 30th of November, and the 14th of December. That's how we end the year. So make a note manifestation of these eclipses. Observe what's happening in the outer world and also in your inner world, especially if you're Cancer or Capricorn or Gemini or Sagittarius. You'll be seeing a change of the guard, so to speak, in the significant people in your life. Oh yes, the dreaded Mercury retrograde. I always remind people that Mercury retrograde isn't any worse than a beautiful sleep. Ironically, Mercury retrogrades at the same rate that we are unconscious when we're in bed every night. A third of the time, Mercury retrograde. So that means a third of everybody living has Mercury retrograde in their natal chart. It's gotten a lot of bad press over the years. I don't like doing astrology fear porn at all. However, I want to give you the dates of the retrograde and give you some suggestions. So they are from 3 times this year, the 18th of February until the 9th of March, 19th of June until the 11th of July, 16th of October until the 2nd of November. Mercury retrograde is a time to redo, rethink, remember, reorganize. We want to generally, if we can help it, avoid contracts or buying computers or making new connections. Again, a third of the time Mercury is retrograde, just like a sleep cycle. It is, however, great for intuition. And I tend to schedule intuitive development classes during Mercury retrograde periods. Because I like to think of Mercury retrograde as being analogous to the right side of the brain. So we're more active in our symbolic way of meeting the world. Speaking of intuition, we have this wonderful dates here in 2020 that signals open door into the psychic spiritual realm. Why? Well, since 2011, the planet of intuition and psychicism has been in the sign of psychicism and intuition. I've done a lot of research on this issue, but that's for another video. Neptune went into Pisces in 2011, just like it did at the end of the 19th century in 1848. Now that was approximately the date when the religion of spiritualism emerged in upstate New York at Lilydale. It's a religion which believes that people can connect with deceased loved ones, and it really heralded a time in consciousness, the late 19th century, when people were searching for answers beyond the material world. That was the beginning of the Transcendentalist movement in reaction to the Industrial Revolution that was taking place. That same type of energy is happening now in our consciousness. So here are the dates. Jupiter and Neptune will be in a sextile relationship, which is a 60-degree, basically a very positive aspect in astrology, a supportive aspect. Here are the dates: on February 20th, July 27th and 20th, October 12th and 18th. That's when it's primo time to work on expanding your intuition or work with your own dream work. Maybe start a dream journal, take a class, invoke the numinous and the unconscious within you. Alrighty, I mentioned that this is a very interesting year because we have a number of retrogrades. It's rather unusual to have the 2 planets which represent love and sex retrograding. Fairly rare. Venus, the planet of love and money, she will be retrograding. This is a great time to reassess what and who we value. It's a period that's not fantastic for getting married or starting a new relationship. Now, I know some of you might, oh my gosh, you may be going to a wedding or maybe even getting married during a Venus retrograde. Please be aware that you can always override the messages of the planets, but just to be very aware, especially on the exact day of a wedding, for example. Things might not go as you wanted them to specifically. Mishaps happen all the time during weddings. So I'm not saying you're doomed to get married during a Venus retrograde. It's not the ideal, but just be aware for your understanding as you go through this year. Not the best time for financial undertakings, contracts. There may be delays or confusion. If you're in a beautiful relationship, you may have this sense of irritation or annoyance with your partner. We all know in long-term relationships, these things do happen. So I always advise clients, please do not break up during a Venus retrograde. It's a time to reconsider the relationship, however. All right, this is a lot of information here, but it gives you both the shadow period for Venus retrograde and when it resumes. So the retrograde shadow starts on April 9th. It actually retrogrades on May 13th. These are at Eastern Standard Time. And it turns direct on June 25th. And the shadow until July 29th. Remember, a retrograde, the planets aren't exactly going backwards, okay? They're essentially illusions that result from our point of view on Earth, because the Earth is also orbiting the sun at a different speed than the other planets. So Venus retrograde occurs approximately every 18 months, and it happens to be in 2020. Now Mars is the anger, the yang energy, the energy of ambition, the energy of energy. Now it will also be retrograding. This is the will force planet. This is the yang aggressive assertion planet. During the retrograde of Mars, you want to redo your aggression. You don't want to necessarily be spontaneous in expressing your disappointment or anger, if you can help it. Be especially pertinent to the Scorpio and Aries parts of your chart. If you're an Aries or Scorpio, moon, sun, or rising sign, really pay attention to this retrograde. You may also be questioning your sexual libido. You might not be really feeling it. And that's okay too. Avoid elective surgery during this time. Same thing, the shadow period is on July 25th. It actually stations retrogrades on September 9th, turns direct on November the 13th, and then it leaves the shadow next year in 2021. All right, so our next Mars retrograde will be occurring in late 2022, and this is just basically a time to explore issues relating power, sexuality, and anger. All right, even though this is not a new ingress, a new shift for 2020, it certainly is relevant because it's going to be with us for the next 5 years. Uranus and Taurus. Uranus went into Taurus way back when, in May of 2018. Now let's talk about Uranus. If Uranus was a person, he would be a madcap professor who, couldn't, tie his shoe, but knows all Einstein's theorems. The Uranus rules technology, innovation, electricity, being different, being eccentric. It's kind of like the crazy genius. That's Uranus. Taurus is the earth. Taurus is the stability of Mother Earth and food and love and money. So with Uranus in Taurus for the next few years, we're already feeling the impact of this. We're feeling needing to change things that matter to us most of all, like food. Expect in the next few years, we've already touched on that earlier with Ceres in Capricorn, more food products, new ways of producing food, safeguarding our food, changes in love, becoming more resilient in wanting to have like-minded partners, new ways of meeting people, perhaps using technology. We already have that with the computers, but there might be new innovative ways of meeting your soulmate. Literally changes in matter. You know, when I wrote this back in November of 2019, there was a new scientific breakthrough, which was really shaking up the order of scientists because they couldn't understand why this new black hole that was discovered was not complying by physics, by the physics we know to date. It was acting strange and odd. So this type of story might be resurrected in the next 5 years, not just in 2020, but new breakthroughs in hard sciences. This Uranus and Taurus is going to be affecting the early degrees of fixed signs. What are fixed signs? Scorpio, Leo, Taurus, and Aquarius. Those signs, if they're in the early part, so the first few days of those particular fixed signs, would be most affected by the surprise aspect of Uranus. All right, I mentioned something about Buffalo, New York, of course, because Buffalo is a Taurus town, early degrees 0 Taurus, and Buffalo is already changing up its identity in so many ways. A colleague of mine has spoken of a new convergence of IT jobs coming to Buffalo. We already have a new renewed quarter for our biotech and for the med quarter, but there's going to be more and more jobs of IT coming to Little Buffalo. All right, we end the year with the great Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. It's called the Great Conjunction. It happens every 19 years. And it's the first time in a very long time in an air sign. Jupiter, remember that's Santa Claus, and Saturn, grumpy old man, are the two planets which rule our business cycles: expansion, contraction, bear markets, bull markets. So when these two planets come together, they basically set the tone for business in the next 20 years. Wherever it falls in your chart, you're establishing a new way of doing business, like the business of your relationship, the business of taking care of yourself and health, the business of your spirituality. Wherever it falls, 0 degrees of Aquarius, that is, you can expect a new renaissance with the way you're handling the affairs of that part of your chart or the planets that are near to 0 degrees of Aquarius. So this is just another sidebar. This is not Jupiter, Saturn per se, but it's kind of interesting when we look at this fact. Every president in the US elected during this conjunction died in office since 1840, except Ronald Reagan and George W., who, however, did have assassination attempts. So that's something that's about these not numbers: 2020, year 2000, so forth, 1960, with JFK passing. So this is happening on the winter solstice, my friends. It's a very big deal. It's ushering in the technological message of Aquarius and also the humanitarian message of Aquarius. And this will probably very strongly impact the way we are doing commerce. The actual currencies we use, going more towards cryptocurrencies in the next 20 years. It will make a huge difference in how we are doing business. I'm going to make a couple of other comments also about another important player in our lexicon of planets. Now, Chiron might not be a planet, but it's very important. It's an asteroid that rules healing and health. On April 18th of 2018, just like when Uranus moved in to Taurus, we had Chiron move into Aries for the first time in 50 years. It's going to be remaining in the sign of Aries until 2027. And if you happen to be born around 68, you are having your Chiron return. Again, every 50 years, Chiron returns to where it was. So this is considered to be the midlife crisis of people born around 50 years of age. when they're looking at their own personal wound to heal that, to move forward into their elder years. Chiron and Aries, how that means, how that impacts all of us, however, in the realm of healthcare, I'm going to make a simple statement. Greater responsibility, because Aries is the self, greater responsibility for our own self-care and our own health. And that's going to be reiterated time and time again until 2027. Again, a little bit more information about Chiron and Aries. And it's as if at that age of 50, our crown chakra opens up to new awareness and a new surge of energy. We either start dying or start living around age 50. We all know very, very old 50-year-olds and very, very young 80-year-olds. So take responsibility for your own personal healing as our wonderful Chiron is moving through Aries. All right, so this is a summary for all the signs, and I'm just going to highlight it, but you have it here. You can refer to it throughout the year. Aries, transforming your fear of success into a new career. Continue your self-healing because, of course, Chiron's in your sign. Build on your psychic abilities strongly and establish a new form of creativity and connection with your children. Taurus, transform your fear of knowledge into teaching and writing. Align with your spiritual friends, establishing a new career and healing your inner psyche. Gemini, transform your fear of death and your fear of intimacy into fearlessness. Align with a spiritual career. Establish, that's the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction, a set of philosophical precepts and heal your friendship alliances. Cancer, transform fear of relationships into a new, stronger connection. Align with a spiritual set of beliefs. Establish a new relationship with personal power, money, and mortality. Heal those career issues. Leo, transform the fear of work and health into practical work health practices. Align with a spiritual understanding of mortality and money distribution, and establish a new relationship or relationships. Heal issues regarding travel and beliefs. Virgo, transform that fear of not having enough fun into making fun a priority. Heal issues regarding mortality and finance and align with more spiritual partners. Libra, transform your fears of personal security into a more protective and fulfilling home life. Align with spiritual work, of health. Establish a new leisure and more fun activities with lovers. Heal your relationships. That's that Chiron in your house of relationship. Scorpio, transform the fear of losing time into a better schedule. Really work with your time differently. Transform that negative thinking. Align with spiritual creative fun, establishing a new sense of home and healing your physical body. Sagittarius, transforming your fear of self-worth and income into a more abundant cash flow. Align with spiritual family members. Establish new positive thinking. Heal through fun and creativity. Capricorn, transform the fear of failure into becoming your best self. This is your year, Capricorn. Align with spiritual thinking and information, your books. Establishing new income is a real strong positive for the Capricorns, especially at the end of the year, and heal your family issues. Aquarius, transform fear of the unknown into alignment with your inner guidance. Align with the spiritual use of money, establish a new you, heal your communications. In other words, no gossip. Pisces, transform the social fears into having a new friendship circle, which of course reflects your mind and your companions, which reflect your interests. Align with your internal guidance, establishing a new spiritual inner GPS, and heal issues regarding your income. Well, there you have it, friends. Have a fantastic 2020. And please check out my offerings at my website, CassandraJoanButler.com. Hope to see you again.